So this lesson is about how to find names and formulas for an acid. Okay, a couple of things that we need, some background stuff, information. To start off with, an acid is going to consist of a hydrogen that's going to behave like an H plus ion. We've talked before about hydrogen thinks it's a metal, but it's not really. So sometimes it will behave like an alkali metal and take a 1 plus charge. Okay, and then we'll stick to pretty much any of our anions. Okay, technically these compounds are covalent, but they're going to act like ionic compounds for pretty much all intents and purposes. So we're going to have to find them like ionic compounds. Our formulas, we find them just like we do ionic compounds, and we'll show you that in a second. But they're going to have their very own naming system. We have to do the names a little bit special because they're acids and we identify them as acids. Okay, so the naming system for acids is actually a little more similar to the covalent one where there's like a pattern to the name. Okay, but then the way we find the formula for the compound acts more like an ionic thing. Okay, so the naming system depends on the ending of the anion, right? So all of our anions either end in IDE, they end in ATE, or they end in ITE. Okay, so depending on how they end determines how we write the name. So if the anion ends in an IDE, like a chloride or a bromide or a sulfide or a nitride, we would write it as hydro blank ic acid. Okay, and all you have to do then is decide that you want this form and to fill in that blank. So in this one, that HCl, we would call it hydrochloric acid. Okay. And if it was an HCN, that's cyanide, right, that ends in an IDE, we would call it hydrocyanic. Okay. And then to go the other way, if I had hydrosulfuric acid, well, I see the hydro, okay, which means that I want the IDE ending, and the sulf probably means that I'm going to use sulfide. Okay, sulfide is an S2 minus. Well, all of these start with an H plus. All acids, the cation is an H plus. Absolutely every time. If you see the word acid, the cation is an H plus. And then we do this just like we would do an ionic compound. Don't worry about reducing because this is always going to be a 1 plus. Don't worry about having to put parentheses here because you're never going to cross anything over here. The only place you're going to end up with an extra number past whatever this is over here on your hydrogen. Okay, so we're going to take this 2 and bring it over here and have an H2. So this is our hydrosulfuric acid. Okay. On the other hand, if you have an ATE ion, like a nitrate or a sulfate or a chlorate or a carbonate, okay, we're going to drop the hydro and just call it blank ic acid. Okay. So if I have something that says HNO3, this NO3 is a nitrate, so I would call it nitric acid. Don't lose the acid part. It's easy to do. And if I had this HClO3, I would call it chloric. So you'll remember that back up here, right, I had this HCl is hydrochloric because Cl is chloride. But now I have this chlorate, the ClO3 minus. Okay, so we're just going to call it chloric acid, and we drop that hydro. Okay, to go the other way, if I had sulfuric acid, okay, the fact that there's no hydro and it ends in an ic tells me I'm going to use the 8 ion. So sulfate is SO4 2 minus. I know it's always going to start with that H plus. And again, I'm not going to end up with anything out here. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to take this 2 and bring it over to the hydrogen. So I have H2 SO4. Okay, and then third case, if I have an ITE ion, okay, like a nitrite or a sulfite, and there are more, but you don't know them, so pretty much that's the only 2 you're going to see, we're going to go blank OUS. Instead of before we ended our words in an IC, okay, we're going to end our word in an OUS. Okay, so if I have this HNO2, right, this is a nitrite ion, so I'm going to call it nitrous acid. Okay. And then the other way around, if I had sulfurous, it means I'm going to use the sulfite. So that's SO3, 2-, and we start with an H+, right? So as always, we're going to take this 2, bring it right down there, and have H2, SO3, okay? And that's all there is to it. You just look at whatever the word is or whatever the ion is, okay, and choose which pattern you want to use, okay? And then you would plug it in. Again, if you're going from a formula to a name, we're just going to plug whatever this thing is into this formula. So this is a nitrate. I want to use the blank ick version, so we would call it nitric acid. Okay, if we're going the other way, use the form to decide which ion you need, okay, which is going to decide what number ends up down here on this H. Okay, nothing to it. Good luck.